All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Biblical Hitman, folks. My name is Steven, host of the show, and got my brother, my friend, Tim Constantine, host of Sixth Century Podcast, joining me on this live. But, folks, if you want to support what it is I do, the best way to do it is to head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/The Biblical Hitman. You can get all of your ad-free early access and community chats and direct chats over there. Also, the free stuff is YouTube, audio platforms. Come on over, hit the subscribe, follow, like, share, all of the things, and also check the show out on social medias. But got my boy Tim in here. What's up, brother?
Welcome. What's up, man?
Hey, we're gonna get into some pyramid stuff. We're gonna get into some crazy stuff, man. That really, it's all that kind of stuff is a real hot topic right now. You've got a lot of the official narrative stuff fighting against the esoteric organizations or whatever, Graham Hancock and those kind of people. Like, we've seen it. We've seen the debates on Joe Rogan. We've seen it all. This episode, we're going to get into the pyramids, the Sphinx, hidden knowledge. What is going on? Could this be a connection to the Chris Bledsoe prediction? Maybe he just interpreted it in a way that was slightly off. We'll cover the people who even were talking about this stuff before this generation. This kind of stuff goes way back, and the mystery schools have always kind of had this idea of this knowledge that needs to be rebirthed back into mankind to raise everybody to some level of ascension or to harmonize and to bring together the world. So we'll get into all that stuff. Tim, my friend, where can the people check out your show and everything that you do?
Yeah, Steven, thanks again for having me on. It's always great to come on here and talk to you. I'm really excited about this. It was a bit of a surprise for me. You said, last week or something, you sent me a message and said, I've got some stuff. And I said, I can't wait to hear it. And so a lot of this show, I feel like, is going to be me hearing it. And hopefully I'll have some stuff to add, but I'm excited to see what you got, man. And yeah, everybody can find me at Sixth Century Podcast. I spell it out SIX. I'm on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Instagram, and Patreon. I drop new episodes every week on Patreon. But yeah, there's the YouTube. And the best place to find me, though, is Sixth Century Podcast on Spotify. Come on over. We'd love to have you. And yeah, man, that's my wrap. I'm just happy to be here, bro. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, dude. So I go through like little phases of little things that excite me to bring things to the show. I grab some people out there that I've worked with that I think can really add to the conversation. You're one of those guys. Because you've covered a lot of material, you've interviewed a lot of people, you've done just plenty of research yourself getting into this. So I definitely think that you're gonna tie a nice bow on some of the things that we're gonna get into. So, but shout out to the chat. Thank you everyone for tuning in, showing the love. Much appreciated. Hope everyone had a wonderful day. The resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ is something to be very proud of, be very happy about, excited about. He conquered death, and that we believe in him, that he can also save us from that second death. So it's a great day. I got a nice little shirt on here that I wore throughout the day, and man, was it a busy day for me.
Yeah, you still got that Easter outfit on, bro.
I got the Easter outfit on, dude. I know. And by the Ishtar, golly, dude, my kids out there running and grabbing eggs, and people are probably gonna like butcher me for that, right? But we've got families. Everybody kind of understands that we do live amongst Babylon. But the one awesome thing that I love about this show, what God's doing with me and this program, is just exploiting Babylon and trying to pull the cover off of Babylon so people can actually start to see it, recognize it, and all this kind of stuff. We've done plenty of shows in the past talking about the lady or the divine feminine, the goddess. Some people are getting a little irritated with it, but it ties into everything, because this goes back to Atlantis and all of these fun topics that people like to get into and discuss and listen to. Atlantis was something that was an advanced civilization. and it was broken into two parts, not two parts, but it kind of had two philosophies. You know, you had people that used the technology one way, and then you had another group that used it for a way that opposed the other group. And so, you know, it all goes back to like the Firestone and this idea of like crystalline structures and advanced technology. How did they build these pyramids and all this kind of stuff? When we look at our phones today, we could see that, yeah, this is made out of gold, silver, precious stones, the things that the harlot is decked out in, but also, you know, crystalline structures and microchips and all of that, silicon, all of that kind of stuff. Really just comes from materials from the earth. And if there was a civilization that dated before us that built these megaliths all over the world, right? They spread throughout different cultures. How did they do it? What did they know? And I think that they had or were in possession of some sort of hidden knowledge that I believe goes all the way back to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We can trace these things from Cain's bloodline all the way through to where we're at today almost. You know, you've talked about the bloodlines and these mystery schools and how they like to keep their families compartmentalized and separate from the rest of the world so that they can hold on to this knowledge themselves. What are your thoughts, man? I guess we'll just kind of have fun and just break it open.
I got you, because there's some things you said there I want to talk about real quick. Okay. People getting, I guess, tired of you talking about the divine feminine, what I call the goddess connection. You know, you're just going to have to settle in a little bit, because the reason why we're talking about that is because it was such a massive part of the ancient world. This is what people used to worship, not exclusively, because there's always been pockets of Christians, but for a long time in the ancient world, and in the world that harbored all the stuff we're going to talk about today, like Giza and the pyramids and all these old monuments and stone structures and apparently advanced techniques and technologies. There, a lot of the goddess was there. So we kind of, to get our history right, we kind of have to include some of this, because it was an aspect of the ancient world. And even in Atlantis, and well, I'll come back to that. The Easter thing, like, I think it's great that I don't have a problem with this, with people, with the resurrection and people making this a Christian holiday. I just think that this goddess world order was such a prominent thing that little bits and pieces of that got added into these holidays. And I think that's why there's eggs, and Easter is Oster, Eostre, which is Ostara, which is the Norse goddess of spring. And I'm, you know, I'm not going to make this an Easter episode, but this was just a big thing in the ancient world. And, you know, if Easter is Christians taking back Passover, and celebrating the resurrection, I'm okay with that. But moving on, like, to the Atlantis thing, to what you're saying there, I found something this week, and I think that this goddess world order goes back to Atlantis, which kind of shocked me. I knew it was old. I didn't know it was that old. But Plato talks about the goddess. He alludes to it in Critias. Plato, he lived around 300 BC, and he talks about in Critias Atlas, who's one of the sons of Plutarch, and he talks about how they lived 9,000 years before him. And there's a part in there where he talks about the ways of these people, some of the things that they were doing and constructing. And he talks about how they had a very unique, they had unique spears and shields. But he adds that they were instructed to make these by the goddess. Wow. So going all the way back to Poseidon, I may have said Plutarch, and I didn't mean to do that. These were the sons of Poseidon, not Plutarch. The sons of Poseidon, Atlas, who Atlantis was, you know, it's said to be named after. They were instructed by the goddess in the legends. So this goes way, way, way back. I just want to add that in and give people, you know, an indication as to why we talk about this so much.
And again, it all connects, man. And the more I get into Revelation 17, I start to study the harlot. What is the harlot? You even hear, and there's any Gary Wayne fans in the chat or listening, like Gary Wayne talks about the harlot, talks about the harlot being Atlantis, the 10 kingdoms, the 7 heads. She sits on many waters. She also sits on 7 mountains, 7 hills. There's a number of kings that go through this, right? And the 8th, right? The son of perdition, Apollo. There's a bunch of interesting things to take from Revelation 17. And ultimately, I think what is being described there is a new Atlantis. Is Atlantis coming back as establishing itself as the last kingdom before Jesus Christ's return? And some people may not, may think that Jesus already returned, whatever, this, that. And it really doesn't matter, because when even Satan gets loosened once again, he goes out and he deceives the nations, and he's getting them together to oppose an adversary. So the New World Order movement is a part of his playbook in each and everything that he does. You can see it from history. You can see the rise and the fall of empires. There's a lot of tendencies that rhyme with how he moves throughout the world. But the hidden knowledge thing, all of this stuff, there's a lot of things that are being talked about on very big platforms, big podcasts. You've got Templars, you've got esoteric historians that are going out on these shows and that are really talking, or they were laying great groundwork for what we're seeing right now with the talk about the Sphinx, and the fact that now we have SAR radar and we can see, through aperture sets of lighting, we can see deeper into the ground. We can see now things more clearly throughout the pyramids in different chambers that we didn't explore yet. So this is stirring up a lot of mystery, and out of mystery, I think, is mystery of iniquity and the mystery religion. And the more that you have the confrontation between the esoteric side of this campaign versus the official narrative side of this campaign, which believes that this was built 2,500 years ago or 4,000 years ago, whatever it is, right?
It's a tomb, Stephen. It's a tomb.
Yeah, it's a tomb. It's a tomb, man. I think they were using these things as some sort of energy generators, or creating a global Wi-Fi, for example, functioning off something that would be parallel to a queen bee structure, and operating a high advanced technology through this kind of stuff. That's where psionics is coming in with the UAP, UFO, and the NHI agenda, is that they're trying to get you to understand that with this technology, you can have a conscious connection to it.
I absolutely think that they were broadcasting, I'll use that word, out of there, and that it was some sort of it had a radio function to push out messages in the ancient world. You said global generator or queen bee, like a radio signal originating back with one source, but going out. I mean, and I'll get into it in a little bit as to why I think that, but I've got some information from people who studied this back in the 20s who were saying that, and their story and their research got suppressed. And I'm lucky that I came across it, and I ordered a rare book on this. So once we get warmed up a little bit and get into that, I've got some stuff to show you, speaking to something you just said there about this possibly being what's the word I'm looking for here? It's like a radio station that's sending out messages.
Maybe like a repeater, right? So when you have multiple repeaters lined up, maybe they're in the same directional linear path or whatever. But at my job, we use radios, and with each one of us being around each other, it becomes a repeater, which strengthens the signal and interconnects it with the main head, the main repeater that is in our downtown area, which is a huge 5G tower, right? And so we've got this technology, right? And it's exploded in the past 200 years was probably the origin point of it. And where we're at right now, I think another 50 years, maybe 25, we can get to this point in technology to where the craziness, the wild stuff, the things that are hard to believe can become possible.
Yeah, for sure. And one other thing before we just another note on the goddess thread here, And I promise I'll try not to do this whole episode, because I don't think we necessarily need to take this one back to that divine feminine, but I do think it has a presence, and especially in Egypt, I think that, with Isis, she was one of the first alchemists, according to Zosimos. She had a big place, a big hand in shaping the Egyptians, physically, even how they interacted with things. It was, alchemy and getting your hands in to these experiments and using magic to do things. That was a big role of Isis. So there's this goddess thread there. And one of the things I saw, speaking to, we have this technology today, but what if they had it back then? And I think they did. And one of the things that I saw recently that made me go, was, Cybele or Sibylle or Kubeli. There's different pronunciations, but I'll just say Cybele. Cybele, if you look at the word, it's very close to cyber. In fact, I looked into it, and it is the same word. It goes back to the same word. If you just replace the LE at the end of Cybele and replace that with an R, you have the word cyber. And vice versa. Yeah. Take the R off cyber and just put an LE. And it comes from a Greek word, which is kibernon with a K. And it was a word that meant to govern or to guide. And what did Isis do? She was guiding people in the ways of advanced technology and alchemy back in the day. And we see the similarities between Isis and the other names of the same goddess, in my opinion, which is like Rhea or Sibylle or Cybele, Ishtar, Inanna, Aphrodite. Isis was there to sort of govern and guide, and that's baked into the word cyber, the word we use today for technology. So I thought that was pretty wild.
Yeah, well, just when I started digging into Atlantis, some of Cayce's work, some of Steiner's work, some of Blavatsky's work, they all kind of conclude that how this technology was able to operate in Atlantis was through like crystalline or a firestone or a philosopher's stone kind of type idea, where some of them even believed that it was maybe one of the jewels that was knocked off of Lucifer's crown or something, in the war in heaven or whatever, right? That they interpret these things throughout the Bible probably in this fashion. But it's fascinating that the stone worship and the mother goddess worship connected to the stone, right, may contribute to what we're going to discuss with Atlantis and all of that kind of stuff. Yes.
Yeah, the asteroid, the magnetic rock, the comet, the space rock, the magic rock, all that is deeply involved with the religion of the great goddess across all the different cultures. She's associated with that rock always. I mean, you go up to Crete. Is it Crete? Yeah, it's Crete. And they still have the temple of Aphrodite there with the black rock. It's some sort of an asteroid rock. There's always a magic stone there. And I know we've covered this on other episodes, but I just wanted to tag that in. Like there's always some sort of a magic rock around with this.
Yeah, man. So I wanted to let me throw this up here because this is the last thing. Yeah. I'll close it out with the Easter thing, because that was I'm glad you talked about that. Because, yeah, go ahead.
Passover was a spring Jewish festival, and I mentioned Passover because I think it's got similarities to our Easter holiday. In fact, I think if you go to Acts in the Bible, in some Bibles it says Passover. In the KJV it says Easter. So that's why I just want to include that. I forgot to make that distinction earlier.
No, yeah. So I this kind of popped in my head when I saw my kid out collecting eggs from the fertile ground, right? Because that's kind of like the whole symbolism behind it. And she was literally, I was like, it's the pine cones going into the bag, and a lot of that it just represents knowledge, right? Because when we think of the goddess, she represents wisdom, she represents knowledge. If she is also represented with being the mother of the gods or the mother of this false Christ figure in their counterfeit or in their theology, right, compared to Christianity. This is where you get into the Orphic egg, traditions and how they talk about this kind of stuff, where she is symbolized by rebirth, regeneration, knowledge, and all
Mhm.
this kind of stuff. So I think that they practiced it and they symbolized it in their iconography as so. Um, with the pine cone representing the pineal gland, which is your crown chakra, right? Which is where, again, that queen bee, that consciousness, all of that kind of stuff. This is kind of where I think it kind of all ends up connecting.
Yeah, and even the domes inside of the cathedrals, if you think about it in terms of three dimensions, or think about it like this: you're inside of an egg, and you're looking up at the roof of an egg. Those arcs and domes in the cathedrals are meant to symbolize femininity, their receptiveness, and celestial uh, connotations. So, but you get that receptor in there with the meaning, like a female receptor, because it's art, it's rounded, whereas the male symbolism is the opposite of that. It's the straight line. It's, we could, you see where I'm going with that. This is how these guys that were these were alchemists that built these cathedrals over there. If you go back to Falconelli's Mystery of the Cathedrals, have a look in that book, you realize that it was Bernard de Clairvaux, one of the first Templars, who was set out to build all these cathedrals. All the really ornate, crazy Gothic cathedrals across Europe was built by this guy who was part alchemist, part Cistercian monk, and they all secretly venerated the goddess. So that's why they encoded, in my opinion, this stuff into cathedrals. But there's a lot of egg symbolism in these structures. And then I think when the Templars came over here and built their Newport Tower that's on Rhode Island, every winter solstice, I think it is at like 9 a.m. in the morning, a beam of light comes through a perfectly placed hole and shines down onto an Orphic egg.
Dude, that's the Nimrod, Semiramis, Tammuz. That's the Osiris myth. All of that.
Yeah. And that was Templars to put that there. I'm pretty certain.
Yeah, and you know what I've heard the Templars getting into now, going on these shows. I forget the guy who's the Grand Master that is talking about all this stuff. He's bringing up the topic of the Ark of the Covenants. There's not just one; there's many of them. Again, everything I think this guy's saying is a part of this Gnostic agenda, and I think he is blaspheming a lot of the things with what he's saying. But what he's saying is they're going around and they've been trying to find all these hidden artifacts. This plays into like the hidden knowledge and possibly, the Sphinx talk and the pyramids, what's under them, what's in them, and all this. But that a lot of this stuff was either with the cataclysms, they were buried or hidden in some sort of way, or they were hidden purposely to try and for later civilizations or later people to come and to recover the knowledge and to reestablish the kind of order that these people use this knowledge to create in the first place, right? And so, he's talking about Ark of the Covenants and that there's multiple of them, and that how they were used is that they were used as kind of like repeaters or pieces of technology, that they had mana inside of them, and this liquid was able to function electricity or whatever, right? Like it gets really wild with the conversation, but that they were used globally to connect different to interconnect the world. And so we can even just look at what we're seeing today with artificial intelligence, the World Wide Web, for example. There's a state of interconnectedness that we are normalized and we're used to already. I can go on X and see what 1,000 people say. So we're being conditioned for this kind of stuff because when this hidden knowledge, which I think something is going to happen, I think Bledsoe feels something. I think he really had an encounter. And I think the spirit that is telling him about these prophecies, this is to lead into a new age. And with what he's saying, the Sphinx gazing towards Regulus when it goes from a blue star turning red, this is when humanity will be initiated into a new age with a new knowledge. And it could be just a conscious shift, which is what I'm seeing with podcasts, because these are very influential across the planet. People are now getting their news and getting their information from podcasts. So you've got these people that are going out on these podcasts and laying really good groundwork for this Atlantis discussion, the ancient civilizations being highly technologically advanced, and then where we're at today is we're circling back into that state of humanity. And what a lot of Eastern mystics will say, that there's a shift coming. I shared it in the last episode with one of the Eastern mystics, talking about there's a shift coming and there's nothing that can stop it. People that can't catch up with it, they'll be left to pretty much stay where they're at. And then there will be a group that will not want to go down this road that humanity is going down. And thus they would be like this adversary, which what he was describing to me was nothing more than Atlantis, the sons of the law of one versus the sons of Belial or Belial, however you want to say it, man.
Yeah, I think that there might just be a shift. And if there's any truth, any validity whatsoever to what Bledsoe was saying, that might not be this big event that people capture on their iPhones, or that we see something weird, that's obvious, like some angel coming down from the sky or whatever. But that might be, like you're saying, like a shift, and something that might be connected to that. I've got to throw this in because this just happened, right? So we're in April, right? It's Easter. April 1st, April 2nd. This is the beginning of Easter, right? In the ancient world, it's the Feast of Venus. It's the rites of Ishtar. It's the springtime Ostara traditions. And on April 1st this year, right before Easter, the skies on the island of Crete, where they have the old goddess temples, turn blood red during the day. It was April 1st and April 2nd, I believe. And the pictures are crazy. This place turned red, and people were swept out to sea. The seas swelled up, and it was really, really wild. And I was just like, this is an interesting thing to happen right now because of the activity that used to go on at this place. This was the center of the Greek goddess cult for a while. Harkening back to, I think probably Atlantis. I think what you see is a lot of these goddess cult remnant survivors were like harkening back to Atlantis, and that's part of the tradition, was establishing their civilizations on islands. I think that was an Atlantean thread that they were trying to continue. But anyway, Crete was significant because this is where Rhea had Zeus in mythology, and hid Zeus in a cave from Kronos. And there's just a lot more. There's just a lot more. I don't want to I definitely want to get. I want to get into like I want to get into like where you're trying to take this thing, and I don't want to hold us back. I want to get into Atlantis and the pyramids and the crystals and all that. But this happened this month, and it's really crazy. They call her the Queen of the Labyrinth on Crete. That's what they used to call her.
Wow. Well, here's the thing, man. This is what I see happening with what's being played out right now, right? Because this is on a rise, and I would say that this is a narrative that's catching people, seducing people. The fact that with the wisdom coming from the East, which is a Zoroastrian thing, by the way, too, with Alaro Mazda, and then you've got Bledsoe talking about that the Regulus, right? The Sphinx is gazing towards the East. This is the counterfeit of the astrological signs of the Antichrist. Like what I mean by this is the counterfeit. This is the counterfeit to Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, the three wise men, the North Star, all this kind of stuff, right? So what I see what's happening right now is a counterfeit to what God did already. And if that is the fact, if that is what's going on, then what you're saying is like true. Like this could be the birth of the Antichrist. Who knows? Maybe spiritually or symbolically, right? It's representing the same thing. Maybe that's what that new knowledge kind of means, right? Yeah. More or less like humanity will birth just a new philosophy, a
The
new everything.
yeah, the sky turns red, kind of on around Easter, and that's just that red is very symbolic. You see Mary holding the red egg. You see there's a book called The Red Goddess where this guy took years, like I think 7 or 8 years. He
The
dealt
beast has scarlet on it too.
Scarlet Beast. And in that Red Goddess book, he goes back and looks at Goddess Babylon, which is our Mystery Babylon religion. And he ties that together with the goddesses that we're talking about today. Like he solidifies that this is Ishtar and Inanna. That is also the goddess Babylon. And there's red symbolism. He calls the book itself the Red Goddess. And then there's, all this other stuff. So I'm wondering if that has something to do with the Bledsoe prediction, because, the skies of Crete turn red on Easter, and who knows, man. It's something was stirring up the ocean itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude. Yeah. So I'll throw this little video. I'm not going to play the whole thing. It's like 14 minutes long, but the intro kind of gets you hyped about the topic and the situation that we're bringing to the table. So this is Jay Anderson. Shout out to Jay. Where are we at? We on the right one? Is this full screen?
I can see it.
Okay. So let me do this here. All right. Oh, it's not playing? Hold on a second. 1 second. I'm on the wrong screen. Technical difficulty.
Jay Anderson.
Jay Anderson, yeah.
Okay.
Let me see. I'm pretty sure I'm on the right thing. Let me know if this full screen's actually, I'll just move you right here. Okay. Pull this up. I'm working it, people.
Another thing that's interesting about that is that it was part of the reason why this happened over Crete started in the Sahara. And there's a lot of wild stuff. The Sahara is where we get our most prolific, I'll just call them alien petroglyphs. They look like space people and aliens.
Yes.
Just throwing it in while you pull this up.
I know it.
Trying to buy you some time, my man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you. I got like 3 screens up here. Hold on.
And it's also where Aleister Crowley went to do magic. He went out there into the Sahara and did magic. And there's a desert. And there's a desert.
Yes. So Jay Anderson, shout out to him. He does a cool little quick intro talking about the Sphinx, the guy who was been on Joe Rogan's show talking about the SAR radar and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, I love it when things come out about the Giza Plateau. Professor Filippo Bionde, a satellite radar specialist with a background in radar with the Italian government, sat down with Matt Beal and stated that he had found a second Great Sphinx on Giza, buried beneath a 180-foot mound of compacted sand on the plateau. Horizontal passageways extending from deeper underground sections both show shafts that are descending down to depth. They both show horizontal tunnel systems extending outward, and they both show the same geometric internal arrangement.
Yeah, so the story is, right, like the Sphinx that's there is on like the I don't know, like the southeast side of the Giza Plateau, or it's on the east side, but then there's another Sphinx that's on like the northwest side that they believe either was buried or just was just through cataclysm or the flood or something, right? Like there's this history of something taking place on the earth, messing it up for a little bit. And so they want to start digging in all this. But the problem that's going on, the drama, is that the people who have been in charge of the official Giza Plateau, scientific advancements and whatever expeditions that they're doing, it's been controlled. Joe Rogan, I think it was Sawari something, whoever's in the chat, maybe find the guy's name who runs, he's in charge of the Giza Plateau and what happens.
Zahi. Zahi Hawass.
Zahi Hawass. Okay. So they won't allow any drilling. They won't allow anything to be done without his, authority.
Oh,
to
they've got the
grant it.
narrative. The narrative's on lockdown. It has been for years. He's the PR guy for the whole region to make sure that he tells you what they want, the government wants you to know, and then they suppress the rest of it. And it's been like that for years.
Yeah, and maybe it was done purposely, kind of like through Hegelian dialectic to when they do find things, it's going to completely destroy official narrative. It's going to completely destroy anything that mainstream archaeology has been pushing or advocating for such a long time. So I think naturally that division would just get brought into the esoteric division, right? And now it's like the people that were right about this the whole time in that esoteric division they're in charge now. And what's the playbook after that, right? Like, what does that do to religions? What does that do to governments and nations across the world? It's going to, and plus with the UFO disclosure, how's that going to tie into this? And what I see, what this is going to bring, this is going to bring a Tower of Babel moment. The whole world's going to end up coming together, and they're going to want to establish a civilization just like the one that predated them just ancient ago. And they're going to harmonize with this. They're going to probably come under some sort of one language. And what's this knowledge going to bring? Like, imagine this. Marvin Minsky, the guy who started artificial intelligence, with his whole thing with Rabbi Judo Low and the Golem, right? Like, that rabbi knew Kabbalah. He knew like ancient esoteric and occult wisdom in order to give life unto something that was able to end up protecting him and his people at the end of the day. And this is kind of where it gets with Atlantis, and where the two cultures of Atlantis, the single one civilization having like two different philosophies or two sets of people. This is where I think the elites get brought into this, because in Atlantis, they talk about the sons of the law of one, and the sons of the law of one were very peaceful, harmonizing. They used the technology to become spiritually ascended and to be spiritually advanced, and to use the technology for good. And then you also had the sons of Belial on the other side, where they wanted to use the technology for greed and for control, and almost how you would see in the Gnostic narrative as like a demiurge character or a typology, or an archetype. And that they wanted to, at the end of the day, they wanted to like create half human hybrids to do the work for them. And that ultimately they're the ones that always cause the cataclysm or the destruction of that civilization. And then it'll rebirth again in another part of the timeline. And then the sons of Belial would destroy and cause the cataclysm to, hide the knowledge once again. Not purposely, but I mean, it was just the spirit that's behind the sons of Belial, right? Which the Gnostics would call the demiurge, that they wanted to kind of keep their advancements, and they wanted to keep their way of life to control and to keep in a prison and all this kind of stuff.
It's cyclical, potentially. It's what happened is going to resurface or reform, and it happened again. And what isn't it the guy with the golem? Didn't you tell me something crazy about this guy? Like he has an ancestor who developed AI in some sort of capacity. Is that? Yeah, you're on mute, bro.
Yeah. Marvin Minsky is the guy who developed
Minsky.
artificial intelligence 1970s, 1980s at MIT, and his lineage goes all the way back, all the way to the 6th century. That connects to Rabbi Judo Low. And he's the guy where the Jewish folklore is wrapped around him with creating the golem. So
that's
what are you going to do there?
That
1
is
plus 1
so
is
wild. 2. that when you told me that a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago, probably now, that blew my mind, man. That is such a crazy connection. But yeah, It's cyclical. And I think what's underneath these pyramids, if we can go there for a second, I think it's astounding. I think it's going to be astounding. I think there's caverns down there, tunnels down there. I think they carved out a whole inner earth scenario down there. And have you seen any of the recreations that they've done of what they think it might look like down there? Just huge empty rooms. And when I say caverns, that's kind of what I'm talking about. I don't know if they're natural caverns or they're connected to natural caverns. They may be, but they look like giant inner earth warehouses, hollowed out with columns and, Lord of the Rings, which funny enough, there's something to that. So what I think is happening is very much like the dwarf mountain. You remember in Lord of the Rings where they go into the mountain, they enter the mountain, and in there you have these big rooms with like columns and stuff and these halls of the dwarves. What did they call that in Lord of the Rings? They called that Moria. Moria. It was a kingdom inside the mountain. Moria with an H, same word, is the Masonic legend of Enoch storing knowledge beneath the mountain. I'm fairly certain, in fact, I'd put money on it, that Tolkien was showing us in Lord of the Rings something he took out of very old Masonic literature. It's Mount Moriah, you'll hear some people say. But I think it's the same Moria. I think you could say it Moriah or Moria. And I think it's the same.
Oh yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And it's Mount.
Yeah.
I have the legend, man. I have it. Let me show you this real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry if you wanted to jump in.
No. Well, that's kind of like where this all comes from, right? Like it's where I mentioned early in the show. Like this stemmed from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and this went to Cain, and Cain passed it on to his bloodline. And like you said, even with some Freemasonry traditions and stuff, where they talk about that this goes all the way back to Enoch, and this goes back to Lamech, and that this goes back, where you get the pillars of Freemasonry. One was supposed to survive fire, the other one was supposed to survive, the flood. And what happened to these pillars when the cataclysm happened and the flood happened, they were said to go and set in these certain places. And this is where you get Noah and his sons and the rebellion from Ham, where I'm sure Ham and his sons were out on the search, dude. They were the Vril Society going and searching for this knowledge. Why? Because they liked the old way. They liked how life was before that, in my opinion. And the fact that they're starting life all over again, now Ham could become a king, and he could become that Poseidon of Atlantis, and he could be worshipped as a Thoth or a Hermes or Hermes Trismegistus, whatever it is you want to call it.
All of that aligns very nicely with what I think is going on, because look, you have the flood, the deluge, Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Look at the line of Ham. Ham has Cush and Canaan. Canaan is where we get the Canaanites. Out of the Canaanites revives the Nephilim, the Rephaim. Cush comes up out of Ethiopia and settles in Egypt, where the pyramids are. And I assume that goes back to the legends of Lamech and Tubal-Cain writing information down on tablets to preserve it for a flood and storing it there beneath the pyramids. In fact, some legends suggest that Enoch built the pyramids, and Lamech and Tubal-Cain put the knowledge under the pyramids. And then some legends say that Enoch is Hermes, is Thoth. So there's a lot going on here. I have this legend. It's Enoch. So there's several legends, right? And this one is from the Masons themselves. It says Enoch constructed underground in the bosom of Mount Moriah an edifice consisting of 9 brick vaults situated perpendicularly beneath each other and communicating by apertures left in the arc of each vault. He then caused a triangular plate of gold. When I saw that, I thought, is that a 3D triangle? Because that would be a pyramid. You know, just thinking out loud here. Now, this legend is not concerning the Giza Plateau. This is concerning Mount Moriah, which is Jerusalem. But the legends like this one sound a lot like the ones in Egypt. So he puts the triangular plate of gold. He enriched it with the most precious stones and engraved upon it the ineffable name of God. He then encrusted the plate upon a stone of agate of the same form, which he placed upon a cubical stone of marble and deposited the whole within the ninth or innermost vault. When this subterranean building was completed, Enoch made a slab or door of stone, attached it to a ring of iron by which it might, if necessary, be raised. This reminded me of the door of Doran from Lord of the Rings. Remember they had that magic door with like sigils on it? Enoch himself was not permitted to enter more than once a year, and on his death, all knowledge of this building and of the sacred treasure which it contained was lost until in succeeding ages it was discovered while Solomon was engaged in building a temple above the spot on the same mountain. The legend proceeds to inform us that after Enoch had finished the construction of the 9 vaults, fearing that the principles of the arts and sciences which he had cultivated would be lost in a universal flood, of which he received from a prophetic vision. I keep telling people they knew this flood was going to happen, right? That's why they stored this knowledge here. He erected above ground 2 pillars, like what you're just talking about, Stephen. 2 pillars, one of marble to withstand the destructive influences of foe, and one of brass to resist the action of water. On the pillar of brass, he engraved the history of creation, the principles of the arts and sciences, and the doctrine of speculative masonry, as they were then practiced. And on the pillar of marble, he inscribed in hieroglyphs characters of the information that near the spot where they stood, a precious treasure was deposited into the vault. Such is the legend of Enoch, which forms a very important part of legendary history of the high degrees. So this is a Mason writing this. That's why they're tying this in with their craft. Now, this is Enoch. I think there's 2 Enochs for sure. There might be a third one. I suspect this is the Enoch from the line of Cain who did this. And the other legends have the Egyptian connection to this. That's why I think they did the same. I think they were doing this all over the ancient world, different spots. Mount Moriah was a spot. Cush, Giza Plateau, that region was a spot. And some of the, like I said, some of the legends suggest that Enoch himself built the pyramids and Lamech's sons put the tablets of information down there, because in the book of the giants, for instance, these guys were having these prophetic visions that judgment was coming upon them. They were even going to Enoch, if I remember correctly, and being like, hey, can you interpret our dreams? So they knew something was going to happen. So I think they picked all these different spots to store the information where mankind would revive or touch base with, reconnect with the 7 sacred sciences. And there's one other thing here. It says, it is true that Enoch is supposed to have been identical with Hermes. And in the Oedipus Egypticus, Enoch was known as Idris among the Hebrews, and Osiris and Hermes among the Egyptians. He was the first who, before the flood, had any knowledge of astronomy and geometry. So Enoch, he had the information that this is Enoch, son of Cain.
Right. And
Yeah.
Gary Wayne does a really good job talking about the bloodlines and the fact that the bloodline of Seth, right, that ended up delivering Jesus Christ into this world, right? Like that's where that lineage lines up and ends up, going. And then the other lineage is the counterfeit. So I can only think that the Antichrist is to come from the other lineage. And then here, let's just back up just a little bit more, all the way to the garden, right? You got the tree of life, and then you've got the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The tree of life is the truth. It's the word of God. It's the theology. It's everything that is, that the word of God advocates for and tells us the nature about God. But then the tree of knowledge of good and evil is the counterfeit. And it's funny how God tells Adam and Eve, he's like, hey, you see that one over there? Like, don't go near it, right? Just that one you can't do, you can't eat from. And I think that that's the nature of Lucifer, is to counterfeit everything that God does, so that that's how he can deceive people into worshiping him as God. And so in the garden, you have not only what God is teaching Adam about with, taking care of the garden and all of this, but I look at it how I look at my relationship with my daughter. Like, I teach her about the world and what I believe in, and I'm teaching her about the Bible, and I'm teaching her about all this stuff. I think God was doing the same thing to Adam, right? Adam was doing it then to Eve. Eve had some sort of didn't hear it directly from God, right? Most likely. I just don't know, but I can only think that that's why the serpent went to Eve, because she didn't hear it directly from God. So she was possibly in some sort of vulnerable state or whatever. And then if we think that the tree of knowledge of good and evil, we know it to be Lucifer, Satan, the devil, right? It just goes all the way back to, in the Paleolithic age, Venus of Willendorf was worshipped. Venus, pointing in Isaiah to who that is biblically. We know it to be Lucifer because it's the son of the morning. And it goes all the way back to a matriarchy. And it made me think, I'm like, aha, not only did he say, probably, we know scripture says that he said, are you, are you sure God said that? Surely you shall not die and you be like gods. But was he also preaching to her like a matriarchy to try and get her to take the patriarchy away from Adam in some sort of way? Who knows exactly, but I digress with all that stuff,
I think that the tree thing is very interesting. I like the line of delineation that you established there between
It's
the
a
tree of
religion,
life
it's a
and the
religion, it's a
tree.
belief.
Yeah, the tree of life and the knowledge of good and evil. That the knowledge of good and evil tree may be symbolic of the information that Cain took with him when he left the garden and taught to his sons. What do you think? Does that
Oh
resonate?
yeah,
Or okay,
absolutely. Because
okay,
you have to think of this. Like, real quick, I'll be short, but he's passing down the tree of knowledge of good and evil, very similar to how the Bible is passed down. Like the word of God is, the people are calling upon the name of the Lord in that lineage of Seth. They're told not to go into the other lineage because they're unequally yoked, because they do not believe the same thing. And so it goes back to, theology, religion, in my opinion.
and it says here. So I think that knowledge, the knowledge of good and evil, that tree possibly was officially destroyed in the flood as well. If you go to Ezekiel 31, it talks about these trees. Some of them relate to entities. For all of them are handed over to death, to the world below, along with all mortals, with those who go down to the pit. Thus says the Lord God, on the day it went down the Sheol. Now he's talking about this tree, the branches of which have fallen. On the day it went down the Sheol, I closed the deep in over it and covered it. I restrained its rivers and its mighty waters when checked. This tree was so big, it had its own ecosystem. It had its own rivers and mighty waters. And he's saying he covered it with the waters of the flood, made the nations quake at the sound of its fall. He took the tree down, just cut the whole thing down. And when I cast it down the Sheol with those who go down into the pit, all the trees of Eden, the choice and best of Lebanon, they were all well watered and consoled the world below. They also went down the Sheol with it to those killed by the sword, along with its allies who lived among its nations. Now, there's a lot going on in this chapter. It's a big chapter, Ezekiel 31 is. But I just think that this has a place on the table today when we're talking about this knowledge being destroyed and the need that the line of Cain felt to have to somehow preserve their knowledge. So he went to these great lengths, I think, to create methods of doing vaults and underground chambers and waterproof, libraries and such. So I just thought I'd add that in.
Yeah. Well, and another thing too, we'll get right into the pyramids here in just a second. But they're saying that from the Sphinx to the Khafra, right? Pyramid of Khafra, I think that's how you say it. That there's a hall of records that's down there. Now, Edward Cayce talked about this, years ago, century ago, and through his mystic Christian visions and all this kind of stuff and his esoteric practices in the occult, he was really good into going into trances and going into what's probably, Steiner would say it's the Akashic record. So he'd go into like this Akashic record, go into these states, and he would get like downloads and visions very similar to like what we see with Bledsoe and all these kind of characters out there receiving messages. And he says that there's just a hall of records down there, and that when mankind gets to that point of finding these things, this is then where a new age will come in and a new knowledge will come in, lining right up with Chris Bledsoe and all this kind of stuff. But the claim is that there's a huge underground pyramid. Dark Journalist calls it Pyramid X, and then it lies beneath the Giza Plateau. That this is beneath the right paw of the Sphinx, or directly under the Khafra pyramid area, and the structure goes 700 yards. Deep underground, which is 2,100 feet. And the evidence of this is from the SAR data that we got, right? Which is space radar. And it's satellite technology and all this kind of stuff. Like, shout out to the thumbnail right up, look at the satellites shooting down. And that they're picking out a massive, finding here. And SAR images are all coming out. I'll share some right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I didn't have much.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I thought you were still. I was going to let you keep trucking, baby.
Yeah. No, it's wild. I want to show some of the. I showed them a little earlier, but I want to show some of these pictures here of what it is that they see all of this.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was alluding to. The SARs. That's what they call that, right? Is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, these images that they've generated based on the LiDAR, and some of these guys. So one of the clips you played referenced a Matt Bill show, and he had a guy on who was showing a lot of really crazy images of what they think's down there. Big empty halls.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at these myths and these legends, and I appreciate you letting me read that one out, because I think it gives us some context for why the ancients would have done this in the first place. I really do. Yeah,
man, it's wild. Now, the thing I'm going to show here is like an AI generated image of the SAR radar. And so you could see like these chambers in here, and you could see that this is going down 2,100 feet. And, so when you look at this, and obviously this has held a great amount of criticism, right? Like these by the mainstream, right? This is like the war I'm talking about between the two. What are your thoughts on this here and maybe its functions?
Multiple functions, I would wager. I suspect it had multiple functions, and I think maybe some of the different pyramids had their own unique function. And you hinted at this in the intro. You're talking about the crystals. I think maybe there's something to that, like a magic rock. First of all, let me say this, as far as Edgar Cayce goes, him talking about the Hall of Records that's under the ground, under the plateau there. I suspect that that's real, and it might even be more real than he was suggesting. That was I don't know if he was talking about a metaphysical hall of records or an actual physical hall of records, like a library, but I suspect it's the latter. I think they just stored, if not books, tablets down there. And so there was a library of Alexandria, of the ancient world down there, with all this advanced knowledge. And that alone would be a reason for the government to adamantly deny any of this and to keep it covered up for as long as they possibly could. Because that's the big thing right now. There's this war on free energy, has been for centuries, really, but especially since J.P. Morgan and Tesla's days. And we can go back and look and see how these robber barons came in and try to put a price tag on everything, including medicine and oil and everything. If it didn't profit them, they didn't want to use it. And free energy does not profit them. And you remember recently, maybe it's been a year or more at this point, but Randall Carlson on Joe Rogan saying, I got this team of people. We're about to come out with all this information concerning plasmoids and free energy. It's going to change the way we do things on this planet. It's a matter of time. We're coming out with it. We haven't heard a peep out of him or anybody else about that since. It's like he never said it. That's because there's powers, big powers in this world that are invested in not allowing that information to come out.
Well, but this is where the Atlantis two cultures comes in, where you have people that are holding and restricting this knowledge, and then you've got like the other side that wants to liberate it and share it and have it for the whole world. And so I believe that the adversary is in control of both of those sides, right? The sons of the law of one and the sons of Belial. Because when you actually look at the tree, right, like it's good and evil. And so those are the tendencies between the two. And if you've seen a picture on the internet of a snake eating itself, I feel like that's kind of a good illustration of what Satan does. Like he runs a kingdom that is not just one side. It's balanced between both sides, good and evil. And that's the counterfeit to God. God is only righteous. God is only one steadfast type, and he is holiness and he is righteousness. And that's the interesting thing about the counterfeit, is that it's inverted. It actually operates through both energies. It operates through good and evil. When you look at Kabbalah and you see that there is a tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and then the Qliphoth, and you're like, whoa. And then really the great work, the magnum opus, is to be able to balance and to harmonize both of those things, and to ultimately conquer and rule over both, consciously. And so, one big player in all of this, you mentioned Edgar Cayce, and he was born in 1877, passed away in 1945. He was known for delivering over 14,000 psychic readings while in trance state. And, he provided detailed accounts of Atlantis and its connection to Egypt. And so the narrative is, with Cayce and Steiner, Blavatsky, and many other mystery school advocates, they say that societies have found this knowledge, and when they did find this knowledge, it helped them build empires and kingdoms. And so this is in conflict with the mainstream narrative, because they believe that the people that were in that time that built the pyramids, that this was right around the same time that they just figured out the wheel. And so it doesn't really match up, but Cayce describes that, that there are records underneath the Giza Plateau and kind of what we're talking about. And real quick, when he was growing up, he went into a coma at a very young age. I think it was like 7 years old or something like that. And when he came out of this coma, he just didn't talk. He didn't speak. He was mute. But he kind of had these abilities afterwards. And so I've talked about on the show and why Epstein was very interested in brain, traumatic brain injuries and people's outcomes, and what did they get after the fact. People end up kind of, they have the ability to possibly access their dark brain or the dark matter in their brain. But Cayce, he wouldn't talk, but he would have these psychic abilities, and he would be able to go into these states. And so he had a doctor, and it was, the hypnotist, the doctor hypnotist that he was with, he wanted to put him under hypnotism to try and get him to speak, and it never worked. And so with the process that he was going about with Cayce, with hypnotism, Cayce was like, I'll do it myself. I don't need you. I'm actually really good at this. And so he did it himself. And he actually spoke for the first time after the Coney, and he projected out a deep voice, right? That basically wasn't him. And what it said is the whole reason why he can't speak. And it's because he had like some issue medically or something like that. And so he ended up healing himself. And so he got into like the medical system, or just holistic healthcare. And with the 14,000 or so psychic readings he was doing, he was actually helping people with holistic medicine and all this kind of stuff. And he'd get into these trances, man, and he would see things, and he would hear things, and you receive downloads of information. And this is known as the Akashic Records, according to Steiner, Blavatsky, and many others. But he had a prediction, and he had many predictions that actually ended up like coming true, right? But he had a prediction about the Hall of Records. And in this prediction, he said that it lies via a passage from the right paw of the Sphinx to the pyramid. And so this is what is the discussion right now, all over X, all over these esoteric communities, all over the pyramid conspiracy, is that this is where there's an entrance that will lead to like this hall. And
Yep.
The records are housed inside the pyramid. And thinking about the pyramid, dude, it's a pretty well fortified structure. And I could only think that the Egyptians, when they established everything on the Giza Plateau, that they had the knowledge to do this. They exploited, they used it, and then they decided to keep it safe. And they kept it safe inside the pyramid or underneath in some way. But I also think the pyramid functioned as some sort of technology or a Tower of Babel for the society.
Oh, for sure. And we might need to revisit this and do something on this, but the story that I've heard from people in the know who go over there, do what they can, because they're not allowed to just go full hog over there. The government's breathing down everybody's necks. Some people just get kicked off the premises altogether. But the story that I've heard from several people is that they have discovered these tunnels that lead from the Sphinx, from the paw even to the pyramid. They know they're there. They know they've seen entrances. Some people claim that they know people who found it and been through there and everything. There's a lot of conspiracy around it, but the word on the street is that those tunnels do exist. They have been found. The government is not allowing them to pursue it any further. And I think what we're going to find is, as what did they say? Science progresses one death at a time, as these people over there who are in control of this current narrative start to pass away. I think we're going to start to see that some of these things that Cayce himself talked about are going to be true. What's going to be in there? That's anybody's guess.
No, I know.
But,
well, this is what Cayce says is in there, and that the chamber contains information about Atlantis, and it includes all of the knowledge for the advanced technologies and the histories.
I got something on that. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So the information on Atlantis, this is somebody I came across said the same thing. I got this guy's book, John Kinnaman. He died in the 60s. I'm probably the only person in my state who has this book. This guy has been wiped off the face of the planet as far as legacy goes. All his work, they've swept all this up. it's a miracle I came across this. He was working with Petrie, one of the big Egyptologists. He's worked with all these guys. He went over. This guy helped find the tomb of Queen Sheba, the Queen of Sheba. He was doing an excavation on the south wall of the pyramid. This was in the 20s, if I remember correctly. They said they found a chamber. They went in and they found records. And he said that they believed that the records indicated that this was the thing was built by Atlanteans, and that they used anti-gravity to help build it, some form of anti-gravity. But they said Atlanteans. Now, okay, real quick, is that really what it is? Was it really Atlantis, or is that the name that he gave them because he assumed it was Atlantis? I think it could go. This might be the land of Nod. This might be Cain's people that built this. I suspect it was. But anyway, he says that they believe it was Atlantis. The government comes in. The British government comes in. The Egyptian government comes in. They have a talk, and they decide. His words were that the world is not ready for it. That was their excuse. They decided to lock the whole thing down. And you'll never hear the story. But he says they found it and that they thought it was Atlantis. It had something. There were things in there that made them say, "Oh, this is Atlantean." So that kind of connects with what you're saying, I think. And then whatever he did find, though, changed him. He went from a secular archaeologist to a biblical archaeologist overnight. Dedicated the rest of his life to biblical archaeology and started writing these books. And it's a shame that his name isn't known, and these are so hard to find and get a hold of. But they also said that he believed that way down beneath the pyramid, the priests had a giant crystal down there that they were doing something with, and he suspected that this was used for like a radio broadcasting station to send messages out all over the world. Possibly even, and this is where it gets kind of crazy. If I haven't lost people already, I'll lose them here, but possibly even sending messages to the Grand Canyon.
Oh, wow.
All the way over here in North America.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing about Egypt is Cayce was saying that this is where the people that had the knowledge, they fled to Egypt because they had some sort of idea of what was there already. Like if you're restarting after a cataclysm or a flood, you don't really want to start directly from ground zero. You actually want to go back to some of these areas that existed in the days before the flood, so that kind of the foundation is already there. Yeah, things might be destroyed, but at least the foundation's there. It was rock solid, or something. So Cayce says that in his downloads, that this is where the Egyptians came in, and they came into developing the Giza Plateau and all this kind of stuff with the knowledge and the technology and all of this or whatever. And then Cayce has these visions, or he gets this information about Atlantis and what it was laid out like as a civilization. And it was all just one civilization. And I've talked about these two groups, but it can go by a couple of different names. It's the Amelia group or the Belial group. Very similar to kind of how we see in politics with Republican and Democrat. It's all one government, but it's kind of broken up, and they just don't really agree with how to govern, right? And so according to Cayce, Atlantis was a highly advanced globalized society that dated around 10,500 BCE. And their power and where they got most of what functioned, all of their tech came from the Tuai stone, right? Which is like, sometimes known as the Firestone, from other people that have talked about the same thing, that it's this esoteric crystal, right? That's like
Hmm.
this esoteric based crystal that functions like a power station. It's like when we see in the beginning of Captain America and the Nazis they all have this high tech. It's functioned because of the Tesseract. So the Tesseract is like that concept, right? And the Tesseract was blue, so I'm not sure if there was any like blue crystals or blue stones or anything that were worshipped back in the day. I think there was.
Yeah.
Maybe it points
Yeah.
back to the
Those were the,
goddess.
yeah, exactly. They were so black that they were blue is what
Mhm.
is often said. They had a bluish tint to them. We saw that in the painting that the painting I showed you the other day. Uh, his name's his Salvador Dali, the Salvador Dali painting. He has the
Mhm.
guy looking into the cave, and inside the cave, in looks like a black stone, but it's giving off this blue hue.
Yeah,
And
dude.
I think that represents what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the chapels and cathedrals in the area have pieces of this stone there on display, being watched over by a Madonna or a Black Madonna. And they're in the
Mm.
picture, you can see it's black, but it looks kind of blue, like a bluish stone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, man. Again, like all
Yeah.
this kind of stuff connects, man. It really does.
Yeah.
Um, the Amelius group, or law of this, or the Sons of the Law of One, this group was spiritual. They were harmonious. They wanted to ascend consciously by using the stone, by using the capabilities that they could exploit out of the tech. And the Belial group was more of like a power hungry, like black magician style society that wanted to use it for control. They wanted to use the technology for domination, if that's like how you want to put it. So when I looked at these two groups and I look at our reality, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can kind of see where the two play out, and throughout culture. And so you've got people like Elon Musk, you've got people like Bill Gates, you've got people like Larry Ellison, Oracle, who knows, maybe even Donald Trump with the Stargate project, and Palantir, and Anduril, and I can go on forever
Oh,
with.
Palantir, the Seeing Stone.
There you go.
That's from
Right.
Lord of the Rings. They
Yeah.
named it after Lord of the Rings. It was a stone that it operated essentially like a crystal
Crystal
ball, a
ball.
giant crystal ball. Yeah, it's a divination tool. You look into the stone and you see the future or things. Yeah,
Yeah.
Palantir, Seer Stone.
Yeah. And so that group there, we all know that as like the deep state. Alex Jones has been talking about it for a long time, but I find it interesting where Alex Jones may play, in what side he'll take for the coming Atlantis. I'm interested to see where this is the shift. When we see the shift, when this knowledge comes, or when they actually go and they excavate and they take these things out, and it goes worldwide, and everyone's marveling at what's happening, and it gets into the hands of the people, and the people go, hey, let us build a tower, right? That's like what's going to happen when all this plays out. But what's going to happen with the elites? What's going on with everything with see, this is why I think the Epstein files was released. I always had this in my back, just in the back of my mind, where I'm like, they're releasing this on purpose. It's very timely. The UFO thing is coming up. This the just the nations are very they're just clashing at each other. But it makes sense for the Epstein files to come out, to now globalize, that everyone can identify the deep state, what it is that they're doing, that there is this evil side of these elites that run the world. And they're actually behind the agenda, pushing technology, crystalline structures that will, at the end of the day, control us, and keep us in this fourth industrial revolution, or they're using the technology for their control and for their agenda. But then we see that they all are Gnostic. If anything, there's a lot of weird esoteric religions or mystery religions that they all believe in, and I think they all kind of worship the same author that the Amelia group is going to worship. Because the Amelia group, in my opinion, is more of like in a dormant state right now. It's being talked about. This is like where Gnosticism light. Hey, we need to expand consciously. We need to be good. We need to have peace and love and harmony and balance and all of this. They're gonna the both have to function in one society. So again, I think that the Amelia group hasn't fully risen yet because they haven't gotten the technology or the knowledge. But once that knowledge now comes to the people, like in my opinion, it did for Tower of Babel. I think they all said, "Hey, let us come together as one because we have this. We've found this." Again, it's not scripture, but I feel like that's what happened there, the Luciferian doctrine, and everybody said, let's come together and not go back to how we were scattered, divided, order, like kind of what we see with that Belial group or whatever. So the two will end up harmonizing with each other somehow, because they're ultimately one civilization.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up this movie. I think it's called Final Countdown, and I don't remember which Sheen is in it, but it's one of the Sheens is acting in it, and people involved in the film were Navy. There's a lot of Navy connections to the film. The Navy, in fact, funded the film. The conspiracy around the movie is that 30 minutes is missing from the end of the film, and that's because it was removed because they got a little too close. They hit a little too much on the nose, like they were telling a story that the military did not want being told, so they removed the 30 minutes. But in the movie, Sheen has a crystal, Atlantean crystal, that he can use to open or manage portals. And where it gets kind of real, you could say, is that there is another sort of adjoining conspiracy that there's the USS Carthage opened a portal in the Caribbean. They actually, in real life, had one of these crystals and was using it, and they in the Caribbean, where you get, I think that's where you get a lot of these legends of Atlantis. There's a lot of underground or underwater structures down there that are very suspicious, very Atlantean in the Caribbean, and a lot of these legends of these ocean crystals, these Gnostic ocean crystals, come from that area. And that's apparently they were working with one, as the conspiracy goes, at least they were working with one. They opened the portal, but that was somebody in Hollywood, as they do, either meant to or accidentally stumbled across or started telling a real story, something that happened in real life. And it's all about this crystal. That's what came to mind whenever you said much of what you said was this Final Countdown movie conspiracy, where they show this crystals being used to open portals.
Yeah, when you look at the Tower of Babel too, right? Gateway to the gods, right?
Yeah,
I mean, and what was Nimrod representing? He was represented as a mighty hunter, and I think he was trying to be the leader for the people to go to war with God. And the abilities that I think they had, the technology that they were using, I think was sophisticated. I don't think it was, swords and shields and rocks. I think it was really sophisticated. And God says something that always, tickles my curiosity, because I'm like, man, dude, what is he saying? But he's like, anything that the people imagine to do, they're going to be able to do. And so that's where I think there was some sort of metaphysical there was some sort of metaphysical practice that these people were able to do. I think that it deals with consciousness and them going through some sort of transformation where now they possibly could have had some sort of singularity or interconnectedness with technology that wouldn't overthrow or destroy God, but I think it would make things a little annoying for him, you know? Like
Mhm.
he had to go down and confuse the people, right? And everything ended up kind of getting broken up, destroyed after that. Um, and I think that after that, that's just the cycles of humanity trying to bring back this hidden knowledge so that they can establish that empire and that kingdom once again and over and
Yeah.
over and over.
Yeah, that's one of the legends about the Tower of Babel is that they were trying to open a portal. Were they using a crystal for that? I'm not sure. That's a data crystal. That's the term I was trying to remember a minute ago. This crystal apparently that they found that the Navy was using was a data crystal, an Atlantean data crystal, a crystal that can store information. And I don't know how it opens to portals, but anyways, the legend with the Tower of Babel that I heard though is that they had a method of opening portals, and they were up high on the top of this tower because the elevation has something to do with the magic they were trying to do. Being up high helps them to access or open portals more efficiently. And they were trying to get back into the Garden of Eden to get to this tree of life. It sort of stormed the castle gates, if you will, take back control of the tree of life in their mind. And that's one legend of what they're actually trying to do. Break back into the Garden of Eden where it says God sealed it off, and there are angels that stand guard. So, and I've often wondered about that. Like, was the Garden of Eden, was it sealed off? Is it like an indivisible realm that's somewhere in our skies? I mean, this is getting kind of crazy, probably.
Well,
But
I think that the counterfeit of the Garden of Eden is Atlantis, but it's not in a remote location. It's the whole world, right? Atlantis with the 10 kingdoms and kind of like this central hub location that everyone kind of came and in some sort of way operated with or governed themselves with this main hub, the main centralized part of Atlantis. And real quick, shout out to Christopher. Thank you, brother, man, for the super chat. He says, Steven, that's why they keep us so divided. No doubt, man. Thank you, brother. I appreciate the support. I'm gonna read an extended, detailed description of these two groups that were a part of Atlantis. And some of these things are gonna like pop out at you. They're gonna pop out at you, and you're gonna see kind of where you could organize who's who in in the world. So the children so the children of the law of one, right? These were spiritual idealists, priests, priestesses, or visionaries who upheld the law of one, the profound principle that all life is interconnected, that there is only one creator or one source, and that every soul is fragmented of that divine oneness. They believe that the purpose of their existence was to be in harmonious and to serve others, spiritual evolution, and the responsible use of knowledge for the upliftment of all beings. Atlantis golden eras, they lived in temples of light, where they practice healing, meditation, group consciousness work, using massive crystals, especially the terrible mighty crystal or the firestone. This is how they harnessed solar energy, stellar forces, and Earth's natural energies for benevolent ends, powering airships that glide through the sky, go through the sea and land, and even through physical objects. Um, like we can see that today with UFOs and UAPs and non-human intelligence, orbs, all this kind of stuff.
yeah, and
All that.
didn't we talked about chambers once in an episode, the Egyptian chambers? I think, and you can go to Egypt and go and visit these chambers, and they're much like meditation chambers. In fact, they still use them that way today. There's always
Well,
somebody trying to go in there, and that's one of the things you read there is like they had these meditation rooms. I don't remember how you worded it, but and the mighty crystals or the firestones. Some of these Egyptian chambers have little pedestals with these type of firestones on them that somehow, I don't know, they work within the room, and people say they enhance the meditation and everything else.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
give you information, like give you data, like the data crystal, for real.
Yeah, I mean, that's why Epstein's temple was lined with interior marble. I mean, like, what was he doing in there? And also, too, like George St. Pierre went on Danny Jones's podcast and told him about his experience at the pyramid, at the Giza pyramid. He went there, he went on an exploration, and he's George St. Pierre. He's one of the best UFC, if not the best UFC fighter in the entire thing. And he knew people. He got in and he was able to explore the inside of the pyramid, and they took him up to like the king's chamber and all this kind of stuff. And then they took him up to an area where there was like this granite like box coffin looking thing. And the guy that was the lead of the tour for him, private tour, he's like, you want to go in it? Go in it. And he already was explaining to Danny that there was this feeling he was having. There was like just this frequency vibration the whole time in the compartment that they were in. So he goes in the marble like box coffin looking thing, and he's laying down in there, and the guy's like, just close your eyes and think of nothing, which is a state of being clear in Scientology, by the way. And he's there, and he just starts feeling this intense love and this intense vibration and this intense frequency that was interacting and kind of interconnecting with him of some sort. He had no breakaway. He didn't break away or blast off, into the DMT world or anything like that, or into the astral realm or the Akashic record. But, that's because he's not an adept. He's not someone that practices the mysteries. He's not someone that is, knows the protocols and the things to do to make those things happen. So he's just a normal guy in there. And that's the experience he had. So I can only think like it's from the movie Black Panther, when Black Panther, his kingdom's about to just be crushed. And so he's trying to go find wisdom. He's trying to go find information and knowledge. And so the women of his family take him to their area where they astral project. And so they make him drink this drink, which is a purple drink. And when he drinks it, he goes and he lays down, and they cover him with purple sand. And then he just blasts off, and he goes into this astral realm, and he's talking with his father, and he sees all of the ancestors and the ascended ones and all this kind of stuff in the place he's in. And so he's receiving information of how to protect his kingdom and how to keep it, out of harm's way, pretty much. And so then he comes back to Earth consciously, and then wins the fight. That's like what I think they did as well, like what these kings did, these pharaohs, and this ancient knowledge. At least one of the capabilities were the abilities that it had to serve for humanity.
Yeah there's so many connections here. I had a guy on my show once who's told a pretty wild story about his meditation experience in one of the chambers of the pyramids, and felt like he entered into another realm for a little bit, and entities were telling him information and stuff. And you have Napoleon, all these guys over the years, Da Vinci, Napoleon, Crowley, all were said to have gone and visited the king's chamber and spent time there. And with Napoleon, it said that he went in and met or was introduced to somehow what they call the red man, a little red man. It's a really wild story. And after this, throughout Napoleon's life, they said that the red man would just show up and walk into his office, and they'd spend time together and speak in private together. And who knows what types of information he was given from this, but it's weird that he met this person, whatever this was, at at the pyramid in the chamber, and then you got Crowley, who wrote the Book of the Law, in the king's chamber. And he spent 3 days there, and not that he wrote it as much as it was given, it was dictated to him. And he said another apparently thread that we're seeing here. There's these people are seeing other entities or hearing from other entities. Crowley said a angel, he called it an angel, appeared and was standing behind him while he was writing out the Book of the Law. And this thing was apparently telling him what to write. He called him the Assyrian, said he dressed like an Assyrian. And you get into these stones again, these magic rocks, big magic rocks. And that's the story with Salvatore Dali in France or Spain, I think it was. He's in this region where they have this stone there. It's called the Stone Cradle. And for a while, I think it was in a cave of some sort. So you have to go into this chamber and spend time with this. And talked about how he would enter alternate dimensions because of this stone. And it would go on to influence a lot of his paintings. And in fact, it influenced a painting that he did of that's in a terminal over there, like a train terminal. And the painting looks like you would expect like somebody to paint on drugs or if they were experiencing another dimension. Things are just in weird places. It's got that Tesseract feel to it, like from the Matthew McConaughey movie, where things are just moving around and you're not just looking at 3 dimensions anymore. Things are morphing into 4th dimension. So
Yeah.
Wild.
I know, dude. I know, man. The Aleister Crowley stuff is always fun to kind of talk about and get into. I even think he had some sort of connection with an entity called AWAS. And when you look up that name and you see it in movies, it's in one movie particularly called Avatar. The first movie of Avatar, AWAS is like this tree, which serves as like this firestone for the whole entire planet of Pandora. The state of interconnectedness, right? In the movie Avatar, you could connect into every animal or anything, but really it was Awa that had the force to she was everything. She was the mother of all living, she's like Mother Earth, this whole concept, which goes back to the goddess, which again, like I think Atlantis, which wants to come back into this world so badly, and I think we may in our lifetime start to see the beginning of that. But it contributes to the harlot in Revelation 17. I mean, 100. I wanted to finish here real quick. I'll finish up on the Amelia group.
One thing real quick. I think that Crowley was tapping into that because what was he always talking about? The new era, the age of Horus, a golden age. There's in his work, in the Book of the Law, there's indication of this coming change that humanity is going to go through. And I think he was, I don't recommend Crowley out there. I'm just telling people that he was getting occult advice from being around Egypt. And I think it plays directly into what you're saying.
Yeah, dude. So the Amelia group was like this divine, like this loving kind of group. And, they viewed the advanced technology as a sacred tool for enlightenment and for convenience and not domination like the other group would use it for. And a flashpoint with this in their philosophy involved, to use semi-conscious automatons or subhuman projections and to do all these kind of things. And the children of the law of one saw these things as souls in need of compassion and elevation. So this is where Gnosticism has already been kind of tied to this group just from the beginning, but you can start to see that it's ascension, it's finding yourself, having self-realization, self-awareness, and trying to spiritually transform yourself through the technology, which is what we talked about on your show with the Black Madonna and that whole kind of process. That's that transformation. That's if mankind can utilize this kind of technology through this hidden knowledge, then you can awaken yourself and you can ascend consciously. And with that Gnostic religion saying that, you know, you can go and be with either Sophia or the monad or whatever, or who knows, maybe the monad with the help of Sophia, right? Like that's probably a mix into all of this. But the sons of Belial, they were like you know, huge contrast to that Amelia group. And you know, their names were like meant as like worthlessness or lawlessness or evil, right? These were like things that identified this part of the culture, and that they were this order that rebelled against the Amelia group, right? And their philosophies, but they ultimately rejected the law of one entirely, denying or ignoring the one creator in favor of self-worship. So again, so it's like this, it's the opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the creature, they'd rather worship the creature rather than the creator, is like a saying that gets mixed in to identify these people. They like to pursue self aggrandizement or material pleasure or power and control over everything, dominion. And Cayce described a lot about these people, that they had like no moral code beyond gratification. They were selfish, and they really, again, it's kind of like how we view the elites today, right? You know, the Epstein network, or uh, the elites that he's affiliated with, or what we see with Bill Gates and Elon Musk with Neuralink and all this kind of stuff. You can see that there is some part of our reality where these people, with the technology we have right now, they want to use it to, you know, keep us in some sort of prison. So this identifies this group gnostically as like a demiurge. Okay.
Mm.
See what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
so I think that's the interesting thing with all this, is that the people that are identified with this group, they're called the demiurge in this advanced Atlantis civilization. But really, we know that they worship the same thing, the same philosophy as the Amelia group, and what that looks like in that division in our world today. It's just, it's, guess what? It's the duality. It's the
It's
light and the,
duality.
but ultimately they come together as one. Yeah.
So it could be the demiurge could be seen as being very harmonic, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a sense. And so I found this is something I was reading up, and it's talking about this. I think consciousness is awareness. Awareness holds the entire scene together of this dream, the symbolic lattice that we call the world. So it's saying that consciousness and awareness, we hear this a lot from New Age people, is it holds together this lattice. And consciousness is the moving content inside of the holding. It's kind of deep, but this is building up to say that a trap forms when a single constant stream becomes worshipped as final truth. And you get to this point where it goes beyond belief in something. You go from a believer to being a worker for this thing. It puts you to work. It starts to give you a task, and you become the agent of Ahriman. According to this blog is what this is about. And the Ahriman is trying, the Ahriman that's trying to rule our world knows this. So it's this huge plan, and people just get sucked into it, and it gets into the monads. And it says part of the definition for monad is that it's an invisible entity. And some people see them as lesser demons. And we call upon them, but what they do is they help sway the consciousness of everybody. And there's thousands of monads across different spectrums of consciousness. And in this model, Ahriman would be the king of the monads, or a demiurge. It's like this very demiurgical figure.
Gnostically, they say it, the same thing that we were saying, is just archons, and that the archons are these things that ultimately are under the reins of the demiurge to be those people in the Truman Show movie, right? That were just trying to keep him in the act, trying to keep him in the ignorant state and all of this kind of stuff. What I think is that Satan is responsible for all of it, and he's blaming the darker half of his establishment as the demiurge, to corral them towards the Amelia group, if that makes any sense. He it's Hegelian dialectic to try and get people to recognize him and look at him as like the light or the savior, right? I know I've
Mhm.
said many times on the show, but Lucifer's that guy that goes into the house for a quote, ends up tweaking something and messing something up, and then he leaves, and then 10 minutes later the homeowner comes and he's like, "Hey dude, like I got a problem here." And he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna come fix it." But he was the one that caused it. So ultimately, I think he wants to bring people into the Amelia group, but he's he's eating his own tail right now with
Mm.
you see
And
what I'm trying.
yeah, I do. And they feast on, I've heard it said that the archons eat or feed or feast off of our skill of creativity.
Yeah. And the again, like I think this is, I don't know if I'd call it a psyop or something, or how they're playing the narrative right now between the elite versus like this uh what I see right now is literally the Belial group, which is like the elites, the Epsteins, the Eyes Wide Shut, Illuminati, all, Freemasons, all that. And then the Amelia group is like these maybe like a hippie group, a Gnostic group, a New Age group, a Theosophical group, those kind of people. But really, they're the same. They're working for the same master. They're working. Their author is the same. Um, and
Yeah.
it's ultimately to move us into building Atlantis, because
That's
it's
that's
yeah,
that's it. That's exactly what I'm saying with the creativity thing, because
right, okay,
they cannot create, so they have to use us to create. We're like a vessel. We're like a mechanistic vessel for them to come in and tweak and manipulate and use, so we can create this for them. That's the whole Ahrimanic thing, is this outside
mm,
astral intelligence coming to, by the way, he said it was Ahrimanic and Luciferian. He was definitely equating it to Satan. This thing is influencing us, manipulating us, trying to get us to build this thing for it.
mm,
And this goes back to, it's the Demiurge, it's the Ahriman, it's the Lucifer. In the movie Prometheus, it's like the Ahrimanic Luciferian black goo, where even in that original script, this part was like taken out of the movie. These entities say that they've lost their ability to create. It was stripped from them. So now they need to put forth this savior figure, Neo from the Matrix figure. He needs to take the black goo and go in and try to fix everything and create something, because they can't create anymore. So I know that's getting deep, but that's also
yeah,
a Gnostic movie. The whole Matrix movie is
right,
a Gnostic story. It's a retelling
right,
of
right.
the theme of Gnosticism.
And those agents in the movie are like those things that you were talking about, trying to
The
keep
monads.
Neo, yeah, trying to keep Neo in this,
Oh yeah, yeah.
dormant, ignorant state. But and that's what I'm saying. It's like the whole Matrix is what Atlantis is. Like
Was
the
yeah.
whole umbrella of it or whatever. But hey, shout out to Craig, brother. Thank you for the super chat. He says, was Nimrod's grandson the first pharaoh of Egypt after the flood? I just wondered if this might be true.
That's possible, because it's yeah. So it's Noah's son Ham, Ham's son Cush. Cush has an Nimrod. Cush settled Egypt, according to legend.
Mm,
So it would have been Nimrod. Nimrod creates Babylon, but his son could have went back to Egypt to become the first pharaoh, potentially.
Yeah, it's so wild, dude. Oh man, I really wish
I
I could
wonder.
just go
I
ahead.
wonder why that guy asked that question. I wonder why he asked that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is, dude.
I wonder if he knows something.
Right.
I want to know what this guy knows.
He just gaslit us, dude, with this question.
Yeah, exactly.
Much love, bro.
Yeah,
and
that's
this is
awesome.
the interesting thing too with the Belial group is they're what revolves around their nature and what they've done through the history of the rising and falling of Atlantean empires. Because there's been a few cataclysms that have destroyed this idea of Atlantis, right? It may have been different names throughout time, but it's generally known as like an Atlantean empire. And the Belial group would be the ones that are the reason for destroying the empire and breaking it up into multiple pieces, or doing the first cataclysm, second cataclysm, and there's probably like another cataclysm if Atlantis does rise again, that they'll do. But this is where it falls in line with what I'm seeing um, right now. Is you have Chris Bledsoe, you got Ryan Bledsoe, you got a bunch of people, dude. I mean, they're Gnostics, right? And they go out on these shows and they say that the elites are trying to fabricate revelation. They're trying to bring in Armageddon, right? You get this whole narrative from these people. And so I can already see culturally we have these two groups. Um and we are a civilization, so who knows, like maybe Atlantis is right around the corner. We just need like that push technologically wise, or we need some sort of disclosure or recover the hidden knowledge to push humanity in that direction. But that's one thing that's huge right now is you've got these people saying that the demiurge is trying to bring in revelation, which technically isn't like wrong, but to people that are ignorant to scriptures and being Christians, they're going to see that as a bad thing, which then will push humanity towards that Amelia, that sons of the law of one side of things,
Yeah, it might be I think it comes down to a need for the technological bridge. And I because this has been embedded in all the occult and esoteric literature for millennia or centuries for sure, is that they're building up to something. It's like, well, why can't you just get your orders together, unite, and make it happen now? Well, because they're waiting on something. They're building up to something, and it's almost like they needed that Ahrimanic technological bridge to happen, because that's the whole reason for the Ahriman to manipulate people, is to use the earth minerals that like we have in our phones, like you were talking about at the beginning of the intro, to know how to take the earth minerals and construct an internet, essentially.
Dude, listen. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
But I think this is the new Atlantis, because Francis Bacon, the whole new Atlantis thing is about how you can set up an occult philosophical utopian empire and run it with your Masonic ideals, right? But he titled it A Work Unfinished, because in the 1500s, they didn't have the technology to do it yet. They didn't have the technology in the 1600s. And in the 1700s, when George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin come along and they read the New Atlantis, they do their part. They tried to build it. They start the country, but still, late 1700s, they still don't have the technology for it. And then you fast forward to the early 1900s, 1915. Steiner is talking about this now. He's picking up on it, and he's saying the technology is almost here. they're going to be, this Ahriman is going to come down here and influence us and have us build it for him, and then use the technology to merge with us.
Dude, it's wild because it says here that the sons of Belial, they had no standard save to self or self realization. They had no moral code beyond gratifying self appetites, but they ultimately manipulated and weaponized the firestone to concentrate destructive rays, tapping into volcanic forces deep within the earth, creating explosive mind control devices and energy weapons. And they also manipulated all of this by getting solar energy to power all this stuff, which is like Tesla and all that, man. Like, I mean, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It even said, mind control devices, and we see things like with Neuralink and all of that, which is very interesting.
Mind control devices within the earth, right? Is what it said.
It just said mind control devices and energy weapons. They also created explosives, and they were tapping taping volcanic forces deep within the earth. So like in the second cataclysm from Edward Cayce's visions or whatever it is in his trances, he says that in the second cataclysm, they actually used the Firestone technology to tap into the core of the earth, which then ultimately like destroyed everything through volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, all kinds of stuff, magnetic disturbances, and all kinds of things like that.
Well, it just made me think of the Kinnaman thing where they said that they believed there was a big giant crystal down there that the Egyptian priestcraft was using, and it was down beneath the earth, and it was sending out the signals. But also there's tunnels rumored to be down there too. So I was reminded of that as well. Like one of the legends I've heard from, and this one's kind of out there, but from Grand Canyon researchers, they say that they believe that the Hebrews and the Egyptians were there in the Grand Canyon in ancient times, and they knew a route beneath ground to get from the pyramids all the way to the Grand Canyon. And there was an underground route that they knew how to navigate to get there. And that's why to this day, the Grand Canyon has, 7 or 8 different regions that has Egyptian names. The place is full of places like named after Egypt. And I know that's crazy. That's going to be too crazy for some people, but that's what some of the researchers out there say. And, it's kind of like it's all in a name with that. Like there's a reason why these places in the Grand Canyon are named Egyptian style names.
It is weird, right? There's even an
something.
Osiris temple there or something, or I think there's something weird with it.
Yeah, there's Osiris and Horus and all that in the names. It's crazy.
Have you seen the picture of a Egyptian hieroglyph where it's like a queen bee, and then there's like what looks like a helicopter and like a speed roadster or something from like Star Wars or something like that? Have you ever seen that picture?
No.
Man, let me see if I can try and pull it up.
Yeah. It's interesting, but no, I haven't seen it.
All right, I got it right here. Okay, so I think this is I think the bee represents the goddess. I think it represents that stone because again, those are some connections from the goddess and the stone, and this idea of Revelation 17 and the harlot, and how this thing could be helping humanity. The harlot could be something that not only means protection or guidance or wisdom or war or fertility or whatever, but she's going to serve and assist and be an advocate for like mankind. And I think that one way we could see that in reality is that through electronics and all this kind of stuff. When we have, what is it called? What's that Amazon thing people have in their have in their houses and stuff, and they could just talk to it anytime they want, or whatever. Siri, or what is it called? I
Yeah.
forget.
Well, it reminded me of Roku, but that's not what that is. But
Oh,
you remember how everybody had a Roku?
yeah, yeah.
And that always reminded me of Roku's Basilisk, but we don't have to go. We don't have to go there.
So this is the bee, right? And when you think of a hive mind system, or even just a bee, a queen bee in her colony, and how she operates, the rest of this kind of makes sense to me. If this is the firestone, if this is the harlot, if this is something of some sort of spirit or energy or conscious energy, and is here to function and run everything else that we use on a daily basis, it kind of like makes sense. Now, I've seen some historians and archaeologists like discredit this, and it's not really like what you see. It's multiple layers of thousands of years of writing over it and over it and over it, and this is kind of like what we get out of it. But this looks like a spaceship. This looks like a helicopter. And I'm not sure what this is, but I know what that is. And I know that that's always been contributed also to Isis. The bee allegory and the on her iconography alone expands tremendously to there's so much that it adds to her characteristics. I wanted to see what your thought with this here was.
Yeah, that looks just like a helicopter. And I mean that's
It does.
uncanny. And then this thing looks like a spaceship or a plane of some sort. Yeah, I mean, this one's wild. But
It's-
were you asking me
yeah.
specifically about
No,
one
I
of
was
the
just
other
wanted
characters?
to. No, I was just wanted to see what your take on this was, but
Yeah, I've seen this before, man, and I think it's representative of some sort of technology. I do, and I mean, I think that they had flight. I think they knew how to fly, and they had some sort of an airplane, and that's why you get these little figurines. They found a bunch of them down in South America. These little gold planes. You know, you get these skeptics to say they're insects, of course, but they look just like planes. And
wow.
some people would went so far as to remake them. They took these little models from South America. If I'm not mistaken, they found some of these in Egypt too, but these little plane models, and they worked with the dimensions, and they built a plane that actually flew based on the little figurine, and it worked. It had the correct aerodynamics for flight and everything. So I do think that they had this type of technology. How far back are we talking? I don't know.
Yeah. And I think if you're consciously tapped into the queen bee, which goes with the allegory and how they actually works, then you could possibly, operate this technology consciously. That's where psionics comes into it now. That's why the lady is a part of psionics now. You kind of like see where it's all kind of starting to come together a little bit.
Yeah, that's the thing with the stone. That was the priestcraft stone beneath the pyramid that I was talking about. They said they suspected that to be capable of transmitting telepathic messages.
Dude, even the queen bee allegory is contributes to Artemis. We just saw the Artemis rocket take off. Very timely.
That's a goddess, right?
Artemis. That's the twin to Apollo.
Artemis.
Yeah, Artemis is the twin to Apollo, and then there's also another kind of
she's the Greek goddess of the moon.
Yes, dude. Yeah, no, she's representing the divine feminine. Which is interesting because they chose her, Artemis, specifically because the first moon missions, if anyone believes that stuff or what, but it was Apollo. So Apollo was the first missions. Now it's Artemis. What I find interesting about the two is that they both are the same, in my opinion. from how I've looked at this stuff and how I've been studying it and kind of trying to understand the language, the both are the same thing. They're like
Who's
that.
the same?
Like I think Artemis and Apollo, if you bring them
Okay.
together into an androgynous being, they end up having the same characteristics and iconography of a Christ-like figure, the counterfeit to the sun,
Yeah,
right?
it'd be like a Venus, Lucifer.
Yeah, yeah. Because the Greeks really, what they did is they broke it. It's like this they got this counterfeit trinity and this paganism, and it was like a sheet of glass, and then they threw it on the ground and they broke it up into hundreds of pieces. They broke it up so that it would widen and distribute its span of control a little easier, um, which helped authority. I mean, like these people now can uh, worship thousands of or hundreds of gods and serve them in hundreds of different ways, and it's become now more of an expanded mystery religion, but still is the same as all the other ones or whatever. It's kind of like how I saw that culture do it. I don't know.
It says that Artemis is the well, first of all, I think it's crazy that it says that she's the Greek goddess of the hunt, the wilderness, and the moon. And here we have this Artemis mission, allegedly going to the moon. And it says that she is the daughter of Zeus.
Yeah.
And I think that's what did we say earlier? I talked about the legend on Crete. It was Rhea had Zeus. Her child was Zeus and hid Zeus in a cave on Crete, hid him from Kronos. And then Zeus's daughter is Artemis. So we've got lineage back to this ancient goddess culture for sure.
Yeah, man. There's something about it, man. I wanted to
where the sky went red right before the mission.
I want to throw an example of an Atlantean, an Amelia group, or the Sons of the Law of One, and kind of their philosophy of using and exploiting technology to help them advance consciously. This is one of the daughters of a very or she's one of the very high masters of a Rosicrucian order. This is on Instagram.
This says too that Artemis is closely linked with goddesses like Selene and Hecate. Just throwing it in there.
Yeah, dude. All right, so we'll play this. Can you hear it?
With a simple image in the mind. Hermes Trismegistus, from whom Hermetic philosophy and our teachings stem, stated over 2,000 years ago that images held in the mind affect the physical universe, and consequently, a particular image will bring about a particular effect, negative and destructive, or positive and productive, as we choose. Alchemy, the later descendant of Hermetic philosophy, incorporated this insight into a process called transmutation. Although confused by the uninitiated with the process or the transformation of base metals into gold, we know it is actually the process of inner transformation and spiritual development. By learning to create and control mental images, by holding a specific image in the mind, the alchemist experiences the effects produced by the specific energy of that image and finds those effects transforming not only the self, but extending out and transforming the world around the self.
There you get that from the Rosicrucians themselves.
Yeah. So again, this is that side of the philosophy of like the Atlantean societies, between those two. I could throw up a clip of Bill Gates talking about digital ID, and that'll kind of give you an example.
Can you give me it in a nutshell what you think she's saying just now? I just want to hear your translation of that.
Yeah, so what I think she's saying is that you are God, and because what they
Yeah,
believe
right.
in is that what came first, the brain or the thought. So they think the thought came first before the material world, which honestly like makes sense. Um, and so they want to be God, they want to be Christ, and so the person that I think is going to come into this world and lead these people uh, as an example that you can be uh, like God, right? It's just like what the serpent said. You could be like gods, okay? Because when the Antichrist dies and he's reincarnated with the son of perdition, aka Apollyon, he's showing you that you can take up your own life, which it's not true. It's reincarnation. It's not resurrection. And if you take this mark of the beast, then you can be like gods. Ultimately, you're worshiping him as a god, but you can follow his example. And when you follow his example, this is where I think the people, the Tower of Babel, they came together and then they saw, Nimrod was over them and he became a Gibborim. They wanted to be like him. And I think it kind of follows in the same line of what we see there in with the Antichrist, the harlot, and the mark of the beast. When people take this mark of the beast, who knows what capabilities it has to storing consciousness or whatever. If the Belial group is known for creating half human, half technological hybrids, then the idea of clones would be the same exact ritual as an Osiris ritual. So if you take this mark and somehow it's able to, satisfy those two things of that you be like gods and surely you shall not die, you're doing the same ritual by taking that mark as the Osiris ritual and the constant regeneration of living forever. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, and this goes back to Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the lady was saying there. She was a grand master of the Rosicrucians, and the Rosicrucians base a lot of their stuff on the old Egyptian occultism and cosmology. I mean, it is all Egypt stuff, and it's interesting that they're deriving this out of what they believe the ancient Egyptians believed, because she's talking about Thoth and Hermes, and these Hermes. This might be Enoch. This might be the people that built Egypt, put the pyramids there in the first place, and then she's talking about the alchemical connections, and that's, like I said before, that's Isis, the Egyptians, the land of alchemy, alchemical. That's the land of the alchemists, and it's Isis. And Zosimus talks about this and how she's talking to she's doing magic and talking to angels, and she works her way up a hierarchy of angels because some of the lower angels that she contacts don't have the answer for her, so she has to keep communicating with them, and finally she gets the keys to alchemy and learns alchemy, and that's how the Egyptians got alchemy, was through Isis. But it's the same cast of characters, Thoth, Hermes, Isis, and all that. I just think that that's an interesting thing to throw in.
And all that is there too is a counterfeit to what Jesus came and proved. He's like, first of all, he died and he took up his own life, right? He went down into the underworld and preached the gospel to the fallen angels and the demons that were down there, backhanding all of them pretty much, as they're all lined up. He's just running down the line, backhanding them, right? But what I'm saying is when Jesus then came back up to the surface in his resurrected body, right, with still the piercings and everything in it, he's backhanding the Osiris ritual because Osiris can't resurrect himself. He needs help from the lady, from Isis, to help bring his spirit back up to the surface, which is interesting because that's why I think there's a relationship between the beast and the harlot, because that's how the mythologies work together. That's what the divine feminine is known for, the giver of life, right? So And Jesus says that if you believe in him and you die the first death, that you will be granted eternal life, like, so it's like he's kind of backhanding the Osiris ritual by saying that as well, by believing in him. You believe in him, that's that's the real life after death, right? It's not like what the Gnostics or what the New Agers or what the world today is talking or discussing the matter. So it's wild, man. I'm really trying to see more of the counterfeit and pick out more of the counterfeit so that I could show God, because God's word comes out and it's like it has so much meaning towards the gods with everything that he's like saying. Like, why did God build a tabernacle out of a tent? Because the goddess was known to being a dwelling place, a tent. Like, you see what I'm saying? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's all these cool little counterfeits and how he.
Yeah, it is. I see it too. And you'll hear people out there say a lot that the Bible is repackaging these old myths like it stole them. And I'm like, no, I don't. I think in most cases it's more like a reaction to them.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Have I told you about the how in Revelation, when Jesus is coming back, he's got his King of Kings, Lord of Lords in his thigh, right? Which is interesting because it's his name in his thigh when he's coming back, right? He's got a sword, robe, he's on a white horse, right? Which is like backhanding the Antichrist in Revelation of the first seal, right? The first seal, the rider on the white horse. But anyways, he's got King of Kings, Lord of Lords in his thigh. What I found interesting is when I was looking into Greek mythology and I see that Zeus takes a wife, Semes, and has a child, Dionysus. And Dionysus being paralleled and compared to an Antichrist figure, biblically, in order for Dionysus to be born and to survive as a fetus, after Zeus just killed the wife because of his light and set her ablaze, Zeus takes the fetus that is still surviving from the ashes of the wife and sews Dionysus in his thigh so that he can gestate the embryo and the fetus so that he can grow and be born. So Jesus is backhanding Dionysus and Zeus by having King of Kings, Lord of Lords in his thigh. Like, I think that the writers, man, had a really good idea
That's
what
reaction.
the world worshipped.
That's reactionary. That's what I mean by that, at least. It's a what's the word for it? What would be the best word for it?
Oh man, it's authority over the counterfeit.
There you go. It's an authority. It's authoritarian. It's an authority. It's a measure of authority. It's hard to.
right?
I get what you're saying. It's just hard to phrase it. It's hard to phrase it, but yeah.
I've been trying to think of like a really good phrase that describes it, but I just kind of label it as the counterfeit, and then Jesus is the truth. So there you go. Yeah. And it goes all the way back to the garden with kind of how we started the show: tree of knowledge of good and evil versus the tree of life, and it's been ongoing since then, man. So, brother, this has been a fun show, been a fun live. We have a great group here tonight, getting through the weeds and all the stuff with us. I figured it'd be a good spot, man, to come in for a landing and get this bad boy on the ground. Is there anything, you wanted to tie a bow on or share with the audience before we close?
Well, it reminds me of Abraham and Isaac. And we know in the ancient world that these people who worship the goddess like Tanit or these little g gods like Moloch or Baal would sacrifice their children to these entities. And I think what you're talking about and what I'm struggling to find a phrase or word for is the story of Abraham and Isaac, where God tests Abraham, has him go all the way through all the motions, go up on the top of this hill, build this altar, put his son on the altar, almost kill him, almost sacrifice him. And at the very end, at the very last second, God pulls the plug and says, no, you don't have to do this, because he's greater than the other gods. He doesn't need child sacrifice. Doesn't need it. And I see that as a slap in the face, because they act like they need it. And I'm sure there's a more eloquent way of putting it, but that's the story that comes to mind. And it's all through the Bible.
It is, dude.
It's all through the Bible.
It is. You know, there's one that, and I'll close with this, but there's one that made me think where, you know, Moses went up on top of Mount Sinai, went up on top of a mountain. We know that Kibali was known for being worshipped at the top of mountains, precious stones, and all this kind of stuff. And while he's up there, God appears as a burning bush, a flame that doesn't go out, right? Incredible sight, most likely. And what I think right there God's doing is he's backhanding Prometheus, and he's backhanding Hestia from the Greek mythology, which is a goddess of fire. Then you have like a god of fire, right? He's backhanding Columbia. He's backhanding all these gods that represent bringing fire to, you know, and expanding mankind's consciousness and stuff, exactly what the serpent did. But it's very interesting what God did right after that is he wrote the law. He wrote the commandments, right? True wisdom came from his fire, right? Like true wisdom came from, and the knowledge came from him. So that's another cool one to maybe point out.
Yeah. Great stuff, man.
Yeah, man. Hey, where can the people find you and check out all your stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to find this comment that you threw up, something about.
Oh yeah,
I'll find it later. But yeah,
there we go.
Shout out to Tim for the Shakespeare show with Eric. Yo, yeah, for with Ernie. Yeah, cool, man. Thank you. I appreciate the shout out. Shout out to you for the shout out, my friend. Shout out to everybody in the chat. It's a great community here. That shout out to Dunt as well, and everybody who's a big part of this, who shows up for Steven's lives. So you guys are awesome. But yeah, for me to find my show, Sixth Century Podcast, I spell it out, SIX, as shown on the screen. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Patreon. Best place to find me is Spotify. And Steven, thanks for having me on again. It's been great.
Yeah, man. No, thanks for knocking this out with me, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Shout out to Dunt, Precision, Adam Bright, what's going on? And Lattice, what's going on? Bacon, everybody. I hope everyone had a wonderful day, and you know, that we were all just very happy and rejoiced in the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. And I hope everyone has a great night. We're gonna shut it down. It's been a long day. But be sure to go ahead and check out Tim's stuff and all of that. And I will bring up the solo screen. But folks, hey, listen, if you're still here, you want to support the show, be sure to head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/The Biblical Hitman. It's the best place to support the show. You get ad-free content, early access, group chats, direct chats, whatever. It's the best way to really kind of get the hold of me. And you can also support the show freely on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, like the show, share it with your friends. Do the same thing on audio platforms as well. Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, anywhere. I'm everywhere. And social medias. But with all of that said, special thanks for Tim. Love him coming on the show and, you know, just passing the ball back and forth with me. But hope everyone has a great night. Be blessed. We're going to see you next time.